Welcome to Clever Money Hacks, the channel where money moves and life improves. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the end of globalization and the emergence of what some are calling the New World Order.
It sounds a little intense, doesn't it? That phrase, New World Order, it usually makes you think of spy movies or, the dark corners of the internet.
It totally does. Honestly, when I see those words in a headline, I just scroll right past. It feels like conspiracy territory. But you brought this whole stack of sources today, and you were insistent we actually look at the data. So convince me, why are we talking about this?
Because the sources aren't from the fringe. We're looking at data from the World Economic Forum. We've got analysis from macroeconomists like Simon Dixon and reports from the biggest banks on Wall Street.
Okay.
And the consensus among these very serious people is that the global operating system, the one we've all been using for the last 80 years, is basically over. Yeah.
That's a huge claim. We tend to think of the economy as this, I don't know, this permanent thing. But you're saying it was actually a specific deal that was made, and that deal is now expiring.
Exactly. To understand where we're going, which involves this huge power struggle, we have to first understand the machine that's currently falling apart. For about 80 years, since WWII, the world ran on a very specific arrangement. Let's call it the old deal.
Okay, let's unpack this old deal, because looking back, it really does seem like every major region was sort of assigned a job, right, to keep the whole thing moving.
That's the perfect way to put it. It was a global machine. First up, you had China. Their job was to be the factory. They used massive cheap labor to make all the stuff the world needed.
Right, the whole made in China era. Then you've got Japan.
Japan was the lender. They kept their interest rates at zero for decades, and by doing that, they flooded the global system with cheap cash. With liquidity, they were like the world's credit card.
So China builds the stuff, Japan provides the credit to buy it. What was Europe's role?
Europe was the consumer, but with a twist. They focused on, high-end lifestyle goods. But the key part of their deal was they traded their own military for social welfare. They relied on others for security, so they could spend on healthcare, long vacations, a high standard of living.
Which brings us to the big boss of the old deal, the United States.
The enforcer. The U.S. provided the petrodollar, and this is the absolute linchpin of the whole system. The U.S. dollar was the world's reserve currency, backed by the most powerful military-industrial complex on Earth.
There's a term for this that one of the analysts used, right?
Yeah, Simon Dixon. He called it the proof of weapons network.
Proof of weapons. I mean, that is such a heavy term. It sounds like something from crypto, but he means it literally.
Oh, he absolutely does. In crypto, you have proof of work, proof of stake. Dixon argues the U.S. dollar is backed by proof of weapons. The rule was simple. If you wanted to trade, if you needed energy oil, specifically, you had to use U.S. dollars.
And that wasn't a suggestion.
Not at all. Because oil is priced in dollars, every country had to hoard dollars just to keep their economies running. It created this permanent, artificial demand for American currency. And if you tried to break that rule,
You got in trouble.
you got sanctioned. Or in some cases, you found yourself on the wrong side of a war.
So the mechanic was basically convert to dollars or die.
That's the blunt truth of it. The U.S. military enforced the dollar's value, and in return, the U.S. Navy kept the shipping lanes open so China could ship its goods to Walmart in Ohio. And, for a long time, it worked. It created the most prosperous era in history.
So here's my question. If the U.S. was the boss and everyone was getting richer, why is it breaking down now? Why would the U.S. let its own system fail?
Because the domestic cost just got too high. This is where we have to talk about the K-shaped economy.
Right, I've heard this phrase. It means the economy shoots up for the rich and crashes for everyone else, making the letter K.
That's it, exactly. Globalization was fantastic for U.S. corporations and investors, the top of the K. Their stocks soared because labor got cheap. But for the working class, the bottom of the K, the system just hollowed them out.
Because the whole deal was about sending jobs overseas. We stopped making things in America.
We traded manufacturing for financialization. We started making money and tech, not, steel and textiles.
Yeah.
But that created this huge strategic weakness. We became dependent on rivals, like China, for everything from antibiotics to computer chips.
And now those rivals are looking at the U.S. and saying, we don't need your system anymore.
That is the core of it. The other nations, let's call them the sovereigns, they got powerful enough to say, we'll make our own rules. And the proof of weapons network is jamming up. The U.S. can't fight Russia, China, and the Middle East all at once without risking a world war.
The threat doesn't work if you can't back it up against everyone at the same time.
Exactly. The enforcement mechanism is broken. So we're seeing countries like Saudi Arabia talking about selling oil in Chinese yuan. The demand for the dollar is weakening. Even the World Economic Forum admits globalization has failed the Western working class.
Okay, so the old deal is dead. That leaves a massive power vacuum.
The huge one.
And based on our sources, it's not like there's one clear successor. It's more like four different groups are fighting for control. And what's wild to me is the first two are basically in a civil war over the future of money itself.
It really is a civil war within finance. Let's start with Group 1, the financial globalists, or as the reports call them, transnational capital.
Transnational, meaning they're not Team USA or Team Europe.
They don't have a team. They don't pledge allegiance to a flag. They pledge allegiance to efficiency, to yield. The apex predators here are the giant asset managers: BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street.
We hear those names all the time. They're in our 401ks. But give us a sense of the scale. Why are they a power group?
Because they manage tens of trillions of dollars. But one of our sources dropped this statistic about BlackRock that, it really made me stop and think. It's about voting rights.
Yes, this part blew my mind. Walk us through the math here, because it sounds crazy.
So most of us, we buy index funds,
Right.
an S&P 500 ETF. You think, great, I own a tiny piece of Apple, a tiny piece of Tesla. You have the economic interest, but who actually holds the voting rights for those shares?
The source said that out of $7.4 trillion in index equity, only about $812 billion is held by people who actually vote their shares.
This means BlackRock and the others are exercising the voting power for the other 89% of that money.
So wait, my money goes in, but they get to use my vote.
That's the deal. You provide the capital, they wield the power. They can control corporations without passing a single law. If they don't like a CEO's policy, they don't lobby Congress. They just vote out the entire board.
That is deeply unsettling. So what's their endgame? What world does this group want?
They want a world without friction. Borders, different currencies, waiting 3 days for a transaction to settle, that's all friction. It slows money down. They want tokenization.
Define that, because when I hear token, I just think of crypto and cartoon apes.
It's related, but much bigger. Think of taking the technology of Bitcoin and applying it to everything. They want to put real-world asset stocks, real estate, gold, on a blockchain so they can be fractionalized and traded globally 2047 instantly.
So I could buy $5 worth of a building in Tokyo at 3 a.m. and sell it 5 seconds later.
Precisely. A totally fluid global market for capital.
Yeah.
Which brings us to Group 2, who are looking at this plan with absolute terror. The banks?
Hold on. I thought they were all on the same team. Banks, asset managers, all Wall Street, right?
Not on this.
Yeah.
It is critical to see them as separate. The commercial banks and central banks are not the same as the asset managers. The banks are terrified of what they call the privatization of money.
What are they afraid of exactly?
Disintermediation. Cutting out the middleman. Banks make money holding your deposits. But if BlackRock or some tech firm creates a Tesla coin that pays you 5% interest, why would you keep your money in a bank account that pays you 0.02%?
I would. I'd move my money immediately. It's a no-brainer.
Right. And if everyone does that, the banks lose their deposits. They become irrelevant. They get bypassed. So this is a fight for their survival.
So what's their big counter move? How do they fight a frictionless, tokenized world?
The CBDC, the central bank digital currency.
We've heard that term a lot. How is that different from the digital dollars already in my banking app?
That's a great question. The money in your app is just a digital record of cash. A CBDC is programmable money issued directly from the central bank. It's a tool for control. It allows them to dictate how the money gets used.
Programmable how? Like this money expires in a month?
Potentially, yeah. Or this money can't be used to buy fuel, or this money has a negative interest rate to force you to spend it. It's the complete opposite of the open market the asset managers want.
So Group 1 wants money to be free and fast. Group 2 wants it controlled and programmable. That's the financial war. But that leaves out the people with the actual armies.
Correct. We can't forget Group 3, the sovereigns.
The leaders of the Tier 1 nations, the guys with the nuclear codes.
Putin in Russia, Xi in China, Kim Jong-un, and you could even argue the nationalist factions rising in the West.
Their motive seems simpler. I want to stay in charge.
It is that simple, and it puts them in direct conflict with the globalists. The asset managers want efficiency. The sovereigns want control. They are actively trying to dismantle globalization because they see it as a threat.
Yeah, the source used a great example with Russia. Putin doesn't care if the Russian stock market crashes, as long as the state controls the oil.
That is the fundamental trade-off. The old deal was about growth. The new order for the sovereigns is about security. They are willing to sacrifice economic growth if it means they maintain control.
So it's, I'd rather be poor and in charge than rich and taking orders from a bank in New York.
That's it. They want a seat at the table of the new order, not to be a subordinate to Western capital.
So we have the money changing, the nations changing, and then there's the people building all the tools. Group 4.
The technologists and the military. The tool makers and the enforcers.
So the tech side first. Are they on anyone's team?
The technologists are fascinating. They're basically mercenaries. They don't care about nationalism versus globalism. They just care about scale, about data. They'll provide the tools, digital IDs, AI monitoring, social credit scores, to whoever is in charge.
So if the asset managers win, tech builds the trading bots. If the sovereigns win, tech builds the surveillance state.
Exactly. And standing right next to them is the military-industrial complex. And the source suggests their model is changing too. The whole forever war thing is becoming less viable.
Why is that?
Because the proof of weapons network is failing. The U.S. can't be the global policeman anymore. So the military's role shifts to being more of a regional enforcer, protecting specific assets like chip factories, not the whole world.
Okay, let's try to pull this all together. Asset managers want fluid money. Banks want a lockdown ledger. Sovereigns want closed borders. Tech builds the cage. Who actually wins?
Well, the source brings up this idea of the fourth turning. It's a cycle theory that says every 80 years or so, society goes through a crisis, a reset, the old ways burn down, new ones get built. We're right in the middle of that.
And the outcome isn't just total chaos.
Not necessarily. The source suggests something I found really compelling. Political theater.
I loved this part. The idea that a lot of what we see on the news, the conflicts and posturing, it's just a show.
It's a powerful thought. The theory is that the big idea of the new order has already been negotiated behind closed doors at places like Davos. They all know the old system is gone. They know a new one is coming.
So the fights we see are not about if the world changes, but about what the final seating arrangement looks like.
Right. It's nations posturing to look strong instead of weak when the music stops. The outcome is scripted. We're moving to a new system, but the players are still trying to put on a good performance.
So what does that hybrid outcome look like in, say, 2030?
It looks like a paradox. The asset managers will probably get their tokenized world. That financial layer will be global and seamless, monitored by AI. But the physical world, that's going to the sovereigns.
So global money, but local borders.
Exactly. Technologically global, but politically fragmented. The friction is coming back for physical things and for people. It might get harder to travel or buy imported goods.
But for your money.
For your money and your assets. The giants want that to be faster and more connected than ever. Whether it's through a CBDC or a tokenized fund, the way you interact with value is about to completely change.
Which really forces you to ask the final uncomfortable question. If this new world order is just a negotiation between asset managers, central banks, and sovereign leaders, where does that leave the individual? Where do we fit in?
That is the ultimate question. If the technologists are building the infrastructure for this new system, are we the customers? Or are we just the data points, the inventory?
Inventory? That's a chilling thought.
In a world that's optimizing for control and efficiency, individual liberty can start to look like a bug in the code, something that needs to be patched out.
Well, on that note, I think we have a lot to chew on. It seems the best we can do is stay aware, understand the game being played, and watch where the smart money is actually going.
Awareness is really the only edge we have left.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your ideas for future episodes. See you next time.